From the Soapbox is the official podcast for the American Animal Hospital Association's digital newsroom, Trends. Here, we take inspiration from the familiar soap notes, but instead of looking at the condition of a patient, we're diagnosing and discussing the state of the veterinary industry. We'll chat about the challenges, trends, and innovations shaping the veterinary world with voices from across the community. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Singler. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of From the Soapbox. My guest today is Dr. Andy Roark. There's a good chance you've heard of him between the many articles he's written in veterinary publications over the years, the conferences he's spoken at, including being the keynote speaker at AAHA Con just last month, his own podcast, The Cone of Shame, and the veterinary leadership conference he started, Uncharted Veterinary Conference. There are so many topics that I could have asked him about, but what I most wanted to talk to him about was his thoughts on technician compensation, both because we're heading into Technician Appreciation Week and because it's a topic that's still coming up a lot and far from being settled. And he had a lot to say. We talked about the possibility of paying technicians on production, the way a lot of veterinarians are paid, and why he thinks it's only a matter of time until we start seeing it. More broadly, we talked about ways to help technicians feel rewarded for the work that they do and motivated to grow and progress in their careers. But you don't want to hear it from me. So without further ado, getting his time to talk from the soapbox, Dr. Andy Roark. Dr. Andy Roark, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Welcome. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you on the podcast. I know we met recently, so I'm excited to be able to catch up
We
again.
met recently at an event where you were speaking and crushing it, and you were talking about your how do you call it? Your sort of maternity leave around veterinary medicine and planning for practice leave, and such an important topic. And there's just not a lot of sort of support out there. Emily, I was talking to someone literally 2 days ago, and they have six technicians, and five of them are pregnant. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to.
Goodness.
I don't
Oh
know how
my
to. I
goodness.
don't know how to help you. It's a joyful time, and also logistically, this is going to be a challenge. So
Yes.
anyway, I love what you do. I was so excited to get to sit down
Oh,
and talk
well,
to you.
thank you. Thank you. It was so nice to be able to connect with you. But I know you've been very busy. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing because you were at that conference in Orlando and then you were just at AAHA Con giving the keynote address there. So you've been kind of jetting all over the place.
That was fantastic. It's the busy season.
Yeah.
It really is. You know, the kids are back at school and they've got their extracurriculars are going, and then there's just so many like conferences in September and October. I was looking at my calendar today, and it's like if I can get into November,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be but sometimes my wife and I are ships passing in the night. I was gone last weekend for an event. I am leaving on Friday of this coming week for an event. And then my wife is gone for something for her job. And it's just like, like I've enjoyed being married to you. Let's pick it back up in November. Can we do that? And that's kind of where we are.
Oh my goodness, I can only imagine. Well, yes, looking forward to you being able to breathe a little sigh of of relief and take a little bit of rest here soon. Um, But speaking of being at that conference together in Orlando, I was able to sneak into a couple of your lectures in the afternoon after I was done speaking, and it was the first time I've ever heard you speak live, and I have to say it was amazing.
Well, thank you.
You were very captivating. You had the whole audience engaged and involved, and I really enjoyed it. I was very impressed. And one of the lectures that I went to was called The $1,000,000 Technician, and I love that name. And that really inspired me to want to talk to you more about veterinary technicians. But before we sort of dive into my questions on that, I would love to just know what it means to you to be able to inspire and advocate for veterinary technicians and how important that is to you in the work that you do.
You know, it's funny. People ask me about that a lot, and I think I'm seen very much as sort of an advocate for technicians. But that was one of those things. That was never the intention. I never set out and said, I'm going to be an advocate for technicians. The truth for me is I'm an advocate for veterinarians. Like that's who I am. And those are my people, are the veterinarians. It just so happens that I truly believe that effective collaboration and delegation to and leverage and empowerment of technicians is really good for veterinarians. And so it was funny. I think that that's why I have sort of been successful in that area, and why people, sort of I don't know. I think the technicians really love that when I talk about technicians. But I think that the rest of the profession hopefully kind of sees that this is not necessarily coming from a place. It's not coming from a place of pandering to technicians. It is very much about trying to make lives of veterinarians better. And I truly believe that making lives of technicians better, in a lot of ways, accomplishes that goal. And so when I come and speak about technicians, I think that I'm sort of an effective presenter in that regard because I'm really genuinely looking out for either the whole team or for the veterinarians. And so it is that's been something that has kind of blown my mind was I never set out to be sort of a champion for technicians. I set out to be a champion for veterinarians, and I just so happened that that the best path forward involves the technicians getting more opportunities, getting more development, getting better pay and compensation so they can be retained. I think that's how you keep your veterinarians happy.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because you have sort of a very genuine approach to it. It clearly is better for you. You see the benefits and you benefit from technicians being happy, and so you want to help them be
Absolutely.
that way. And obviously, we're coming up on Technician Appreciation Week here soon. We're recording this now in September, but it'll probably be October when everyone's listening to it. And I wanted to give you and everyone who's listening a little background on, the specific question that I kind of came to you with, and that I'm hoping to discuss a little bit
Sure.
more here today. So a few months ago, there was a post on LinkedIn that I came across, and it was a veterinary technician telling a story of another veterinary technician who had asked for some kind of accommodations at work. I believe it was a flexible work schedule. And the response that this technician was given was that the practice could not accommodate their request because that individual was not a revenue generating member of the team. That request might have been considered for a veterinarian because they're the ones that generate the revenue. And as you can imagine, there were there were a lot of responses, a lot of comments, a lot of, kinda uproar about those statements and that way of thinking, and that really got me kind of on this. I mean, that felt very icky to me to think of technicians and anyone who's not a veterinarian as non-revenue generating, because how would we generate revenue if we didn't have them? Like, we would not do a very good job of that.
Yeah.
So I decided to reach out to some experts and wrote an article on the topic for AHA. And I ended up speaking to 3 different experts, a veterinarian, a practice management consultant, and a credentialed technician. And a couple of the people independently said, well, part of the issue with attributing revenue to veterinary technicians is then they're gonna wanna be paid on production. If they're saying they produce that revenue, then why wouldn't they want, a
I
piece of it?
and why shouldn't you give
Yeah,
it to them?
and they're like,
But
"But there's no model for that, like, no one does that, it's never been done,"
oh, well,
you
then
know?
clearly we can't do it. If there's no model for it, then clearly it's off the table.
We can't
Just the fact
possibly there's
that
no
this is not
innovation
how
in
we've
veterinary
always done
medicine.
it means
Yeah.
you can't do it.
So, we didn't really delve into that in the article because I felt like I wouldn't be able to do it justice just based on what I had there, but, like, it hasn't left my mind that,
Yeah.
why don't we have that? And then
S
fast forward to me sitting in your lecture, the $1,000,000 technician, at the very beginning of the lecture, you brought up the topic, and I thought,
Sure.
"Wait a minute, this I have to talk to you about this." And
Well,
I can't
no.
remember exactly how you worded it, something like, "It's coming," or "It's on the
I
horizon."
I don't see how it does not happen. I don't see how tracking production for technicians is not standard in 5 to 10 years. Like,
Yeah,
I just can't get my head around how that doesn't happen, and I'm happy to lay out why I think that's going to happen. But it's just, all the signs that I see in our industry, this is in my mind, this is how it's gonna go. Like, it just is. And, like, we should start at the beginning, and I will totally back up why I say that. But yeah, I think that's how it's gonna go. I think that the opportunity for technicians to distinguish themselves is only gonna get better. So I am very pro technician in terms of I am optimistic about what technicians are gonna be able to do. I think now let me see. This is not we're gonna celebrate all the technicians all the time. It's like, "Oh, no." Um, there's a flip side to this too. I think that technicians are going to have the potential to really differentiate themselves for good and for bad. I mean, some people are going to, we're going to say that some technicians are very, very good at advocating for their patients. And what that inherently means is that other people are relatively not that good at advocating for their patients. And they're maybe not necessarily going to like this where it goes. And so I think a lot of times people go, oh, well, we're going to have to pay them more. I was like, well, your high performers are going to know that they're high performers, and you're going to know that they're high performers. And I don't care if you pay them on percentages or not. If I had a technician and I knew that technician was doing a disproportionate amount of work, or that technician was significantly more effective than the rest of my technicians, I am going to figure out how to retain that technician. And we just don't have that benchmarking now, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so, I do think, and again, I don't think you necessarily have to tie those things together. People say, well, they're going to want to get paid on production. I say, well, I mean, I think at some level, we're all getting paid on production. And you say, but Andy, my doctors are on salary. How do they all get the same salary? No. Why? Why not? Well, because of their performance the previous year. You're paying them on production just on a much longer time frame. And so again, I'm not trying to advocate and say everybody should be paid on production. Some people really very much should not. And I'm not a pro production versus pro salary guy. I think context matters. I think what you're trying to do with your practice matters. I think the people that you're leading and how they respond to different types of compensation, I think that matters. The optics in the community, I think those things matter. And so I am very much agnostic about how you should pay people. However, I think you should figure out who your high performers are, however you want to do that. And if it was me, I would move to retain and reward the performance that I want to see.
Yeah, because it's really about retention, and that's one of the
Absolutely,
biggest
and
problems that we
rewarding
have.
people. I mean, and it's you reward the people who are being effective for you, who are doing the work, who are getting the care delivered into the hands of the clients. And so I really think that it's just that it's such a basic model for me and kind of how you motivate and engage people. One of my favorite sayings, and I know I said this in my lecture, that's it, in basically every lecture I give. People are simple animals, and I don't care how many degrees you have, I don't care what you're boarded in, you're a simple animal. And we know how to train simple animals. It's positive reinforcement. It's clear, direct, positive reinforcement. It's not saying, thank you, you're amazing, you're a rock star. That's praise, and praise is fine. It's good. But praise is not positive reinforcement. It is very much positive reinforcement is saying, you just exhibited this specific behavior. And because you did that, this was the positive outcome that you created. And I want to reward you for that. And that might be just a handshake. That might be a pat on the shoulder. That might be, employee of the week. It might be, let me give you a gift certificate to Starbucks. That's how you build culture, guys. Like that's it. And you just be real transparent about what you love and then celebrate people when they demonstrate it. And again, I know vets are busy and we're all busy. One of the great challenges in vet medicine is being intentional about how we recognize people and not, and it's guilty of this to anyone. Going to the end of the day and then shaking everyone's hand and look them in the eye and said, hey, it was great working with you today. I'm glad you do that. And that's the stuff I mean, I do that stuff. And I mean it. It does not make my staff better when I do that. They do not know what they did that made me shake their hand, you know? But when I say, "Hey," when we were in the room talking with the person who had the diabetic cat, and she was very concerned about medicating this cat, and you said, "I also have a diabetic cat, and I was also intimidated when I found out that my cat had this condition, and it's okay. I can walk you through what I learned and how I take care of it with my cat, and this is very doable for you." When you told her that story, she relaxed, she didn't feel so afraid, and you built trust with her, and that was fantastic, and I wanna tell you that. That's the type of positive reinforcement that I'm talking about. When I say to my technicians, when I say, "Hey, Emily, you did more senior blood work last month than, than any other technician in our practice, and so I just wanna give you a high five and say, "Thank you for doing that. Like, your advocacy for our senior pets is fantastic, and I appreciate it." Then you know what you did. When you go back into the exam room, you know you're good, and you know that you're recognized. And here's the other thing, is when somebody is good at something, and you tell them that they're good at something, and you show them that they're good at something, do you know what they do? They believe that they are good at it, and we like things that we're good at, which means they suddenly enjoy talking about senior blood work, and that we like to do more of the things that we're good at. And now I will bet you that that person's performance will increase because you have recognized, you have given them a reputation, which is important. So when we talk about behavioral psychology, giving people a reputation, people, if they feel like this is their reputation, they try to live up to it. If you say to me, Andy, you are such a wonderful educator of technicians. And somebody did that to me in my first year as a veterinarian. And I think that that's part of the reason that I do what I do for a living. Um, they said, Andy, you are such a wonderful educator of technicians, and we love working with you because you always make us better. And I leaned into that to make sure that they understood what was going on. And I talked to them about cases in a very transparent way. And I think that they got more of what they wanted from me because they gave me that positive feedback. And so positive feedback is important, which is why I'll come back around and say, this is why I believe that tying or tracking production, however you want to define production, tracking production for veterinary technicians, it only makes sense if you have one technician who's seeing 22 exam rooms a day and the rest of your technicians are seeing 15 or less. One, I want to celebrate that person. I want to recognize that that person is moving like nobody else is. I'm assuming that they're doing quality work, and that's important. But let's say they are. I want to recognize that person. I want to celebrate that person. I want to retain that person, and then I want to empower that person to train the rest of the staff in how they are doing this. How are you doing this? I was I remember during the pandemic. So it was the end of the COVID pandemic, right? And we'd been seeing appointments outside. And so we were bringing pets in, but we weren't letting pet owners come in yet. And we had just started to switch to say that if people really wanted to come in and be with their pets, then they could, but we still really preferred that they stayed in their cars. That's where we were. So I had two technicians that were working with me. And so the first technician would go out and she'd bring the pet in. And we got through the entire morning, and I did not see one of her clients in the exam room. They all were seen outside in the car. And the other one, every single client came in, everyone. And so I pulled them in together and I said, hey, look, Jesse, I know that when I see you, your clients, when I work with you, your clients never come in the building. And Natalie, when I work with you, the clients sort of routinely come in the building. Guys, what are you saying to the clients when they pull up? And Natalie, who was bringing all of the clients inside, said, "Well, I go up and I say, hey, so we are seeing clients curbside unless they really want to come inside. But we're discouraging that. But if people really want to come inside, we will see them inside." And I looked at Jessie and I said, "What are you saying, Jessie?" And she said, "I walk out and say, good news, you're in for a curbside appointment today. That means the same great service from the comfort of your car. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And this is the plan. Do you have any questions for me?" And if they say, yes, can I come inside? Then I would say, of course you can. But if they don't say that, and none of them said that, then they just stay in the car. And Natalie's eyes just went wide. And she was like, oh, that's what you say? And then I didn't see any more clients inside the building. Like that was just it. Now, granted, I'm not interested in whether people should come in the building or not. That's not the point of this. But the point is, when someone has got a great way of talking about this, we do not do a very good job generally of showing that to the rest of the staff. We let techs and assistants and associate vets kind of figure things out on their own. But most practices do not do a very good job of saying, hey, Dr. Singler is phenomenal when it comes to booking dentistry. And if someone told me that, I would say, hey, Emily, how do you do that? What do you say? How do you do this? Because I want to know, because I want to be better at that. But I have no idea which of the vets that I work with are really good at this and which one I don't. And that's just a missed opportunity. And so anyway, it's not necessarily about it's not about even generating revenue. It's just about understanding what's going on in your practice. And so my sort of thesis here is that veterinary medicine is becoming more and more and more of a team game. And I believe it is, and I believe it has steadily moved in that direction, and I believe it will steadily continue to move in that direction. And I will debate anybody on that if they want, but it's all the signs are that it's becoming more and more of a team game. And if it's becoming more and more of a team game, why in the world are we only tracking performance in one member of the team?
Yeah,
That would be
exactly.
like if you had a basketball team and you're like, we only count the points that the center scores.
Right.
Like, why?
Right.
There's four other players on the team. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know how are my guards performing? How, like whatever. It's kind of that regard. So as vet medicine becomes more of a team, it just seems commonsensical to me that you're going to start to pay attention to who is, at least who is doing your diagnostics, right? Who is doing more radiographs? Who is doing more senior blood work? Who's doing more parasiticide testing? Who is sending home more parasiticides? Who is sending home joint supplements? Like whatever your thing is that you prioritize, who is seeing the most rooms? Do you have a net promoter score for your technicians? Like look at that as far as like who is really providing outstanding customer service. We don't have any of that stuff in most of our practices. We
Yeah.
just, like, kinda hope it works out.
And that's so funny because I remember working in a practice for a long time where every month my boss would sit down with all the doctors and he had all of our stats. He was like, you did this many dentals, you sent out this much blood work, you did this much in-house blood work. This is what, this is how many x-rays you sent, this is how many like radiology consults you sent out. And he would like go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And just like you said, be like, why is your blood work number so much higher? What do you say? What do you do? That was always my thing. And how can you help the rest of us? Or like, are you forgetting to talk about dentals because your dental numbers were kind of low, this last
Mhm.
month? Um, so to the point where I was like, oh, like why aren't you talking about my interactions with clients or my, like how much I
Yes.
care about the pets? Like, but my point is like we have this ability with veterinarians to track so many different variables, and like you said, we do have more of the intangible stuff in terms of the reviews and the client feedback, whether it's elicited or just kind of spontaneous. And it seems to me that there's got to be a way to record more of that information with all the electronic software that we use, there definitely is a
Oh,
way. It's
just wait.
possible.
Just wait. The AI scribes are going to unlock Pandora's box in that regard. And I'm not even saying it's all gonna be good. There's definitely some potential pitfalls here, but, we're working now and my technicians take AI scribes into the room and start doing the histories, just talking and everything is being recorded, which means the potential exists there for me to, get actual numbers on how often do my technicians recommend senior blood work? How often do they make nutritional recommendations? Like, they don't have to record anything. I can ask the AI scribe, you know, if this person is logged in and they are the one in the exam room, we know who they are. We know what they said. We can listen to it. I can pull those things out. And so, anyway, there's some downsides to this, but the upside is we are going to be able to measure behaviors in a way that we haven't been before. And so I think all that stuff is true is obvious. Go back to your point of, the vets being pulled in by the practice owner or the medical director and they say, "Hey, this is your numbers, this is how you performed. What do we need to do to get your blood work numbers up? What do you need to do to get your dental numbers up?" I will tell you candidly that sometimes my thought has been, they'll say, "Andy, what do we need? Why is this other person got higher dental numbers than you?" And I'll be like, "Because that person continually gets scheduled with the technician who is fantastic and amazing, and I am continually training new technicians." How's that sound for you? And again, and I'm not trying to dunk on anybody here, but it really, I'm using a lot of basketball metaphors today. That's not like
Let's
me.
go with it.
It
Let's go with it.
just going on. We're just sports balling it up. Um, so, every vet has felt that way. They're like, "Why didn't you do this?" And I'm like, "Man, Emily's got freaking dream team around her, and I like training people and I like growing people, but it slows me down." You give me some Hall of Fame technicians and you'll see my performance change in an afternoon. Like I'll squish what I did this morning if you give me personnel who kick butt and take names. And again, but like the idea that we act like that's not true. It's just that's silly. There's just a lot of variables in performance. And I think that's one of the things we have to understand about performance is people say, "Well, Andy, your dental numbers are down." Perhaps I have just had a string of clients who were not in a place with financial resources to be able to do that work. Perhaps I didn't see the obvious cases. Perhaps the doctors who saw these pets previously mentioned nothing about dental care. So now I'm talking about it, but it's the first time they've heard it versus I'm having to lay the groundwork, which is going to be beneficial. It's beneficial for the pets, but it's just the unfortunate, cards that I was dealt. And so all that stuff is true. I feel like I'm kind of I'm not trying to talk on both sides of my mouth of saying these things are important and we're going to track performance, and also performance doesn't really matter. I want to go back to sort of your point of the doctor who is like, why are these numbers up and why are these numbers down? And why didn't you ask me about, you know, my relationship with the clients or the customer care that I'm providing and things like that? There's definitely a trap here. And so I just want to call this out. So I am not saying this is great. It's the way we're going. I believe the way I look at medicine is this, okay? So this is how I think veterinary medicine works. Veterinary medicine is a bit of a battle at all times. And it's a battle between two factions. And the factions are the medicine people and the operations people. And the medicine people are the people who prioritize the patient care. They understand the medicine. That they look at the clients. You know what I mean? Like again, this is not morality at all. There are fantastic medicine people and there are not fantastic medicine people, and there are great ops people and not great ops. Anyway, the medicine people think about the medicine. When you say this is going to be our new protocol, their first thought is, what does this do to patient care? What is this? How does this affect the pet owner and their ability or willingness to take care of their beloved pet? That's the medicine people. The operations people are the ones who think, how do we make this into a system? And like, we should have a checklist, we should have a protocol. You know what I mean? How do we measure this to make sure that it's working? Absolutely not bad. Do not think that I'm saying that. And there are wildly compassionate operations people, and there are some kind of cold medical people. So again, it's that. But vet medicine is a car that has two different people trying to drive it. And the medicine people are like, we should give it all away. Like the care of the patient is the number one objective. And the ops people are going a slightly different direction. They're like, we need to measure this. We need to have, objective standards that we're doing. Let's build some systems, and the medicine people are often like, this patient is special and they have these certain needs and we should bend to those needs. Nobody's right or wrong. They're just different objectives. They're different worldviews. And so what does medicine look like when it's working well? When it's working well, there is a beautiful collaboration between medicine and operations. I have never seen that collaboration be perfect and sustained. The way that I see medicine working, Emily, is usually it's a constant pendulum swing. And so you guys, if you've been in practice for a while, you've seen this. You have seen a practice that will have a strong medical director that will come in, or they'll have a vision, and they will really focus, and there will be a period of real focusing on medicine and medical quality. And then over time, people go, hey, look, this is great. Like the doctors are really happy and all those sorts of things. But when the medicine people really get control, the business doesn't tend to necessarily perform as well as maybe it could as a business. We tend to, I don't know, we tend to be maybe a little bit less organized or less focused on measuring our progress and stuff like that. And so generally over time, we said, hey, look, guys, we got to get a little bit more serious about what we're doing here, about tracking our results. That we've got to increase our revenues here if we're going to continue to invest in training and into the medical things that we need. And so then the pendulum swings back the other way, a little bit more towards operations, and we start to focus on those things. And often what happens is the business swings maybe a little bit too far towards operations. And now, everything is becoming about, maybe we're talking a little bit too much about targets. Maybe we're talking a little bit too much about sort of revenue generation, or that maybe there's more of a focus on the business and the revenue than the patient care. And oftentimes you can push that if it goes too far. The medicine people will become unhappy. They don't want to work at a place that doesn't prioritize medicine. And so you'll start to see there'll be increase in turnover. There'll be some grumbling and oftentimes the kind of the steering wheel kind of turns back the other way. And then we'll start to focus on our culture, focus on the meaning and the purpose of our work. And we'll kind of swing back towards the medicine. And so anyway, that's kind of how it goes in my mind. And I think that's probably a good thing. I think that technician production is going to be tracked, and that there's going to be much more focus on um, paying attention to technician performance, because at the industry level right now, we are in an operation swing. Like with corporatization coming in, with more and more companies buying practices, we have executives in a lot of these companies are coming in from outside the vet industry. It bothers me a little bit, but the upper level executives at a lot of big practice groups a lot of them are not veterinarians, and they didn't come from vet medicine. They came from Amazon or Google, and they tend to have a pretty strong operations focus of what's our revenue, what are our targets, how do we increase these production? And so I think that overall we're seeing the profession move in an operations sort of standpoint or swing. And I think that when we see an operations swing, operations people love to measure things. They
Yeah,
really
for
they
sure,
like
for
to
sure.
measure things for sure.
And
And
as you
so
said, it
I
can be very uncomfortable for those of us who were raised in the with the medical background and
yes.
came into this profession perhaps naively thinking that that was all we needed to worry about. I mean, I speak mainly for myself, until I've been in it for a few years, and to not everyone loves the idea of production, even
Oh,
veterinarians.
sure.
So it's as you mentioned, it's not perfect for everyone, and maybe it won't be
No.
perfect for technicians. But I'd love to just kind of like explore the idea a little bit more. I mean, are you hearing other employers, other thought leaders speak about it? Are you hearing technicians ask for it? I mean, is this something you're hearing chatter about in other places? I'm just curious as
Yeah.
to what
I
what the
it's
demand
not
is.
what the demand is. Um, I think that it is a double-edged sword, which is that let's say that you're a technician and you're working in a big corporate practice, right? A big practice group.
Sure.
And they come to you and they say, Emily, so now when you bill, these services, you're going to have a doctor name tagged to it. But we're also going to have your name tagged to this as well. So just make sure that for the services you provide, your name is tagged here as well. Like, how do you feel about that? Does that fill your heart with are you excited as your immediate thought, aha, I will get the credit for what I do? Is that what you think?
If I'm a technician,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to imagine how I would feel, but I think and I'm trying to think back to when I was in full practice full time. I think we did have a technician's name kind of as a line item, but it almost felt kind of like, "Oh, and by the way, at the end, this was your technician." It wasn't associated with any of the actual services. It was kinda like, "This
Yeah.
is the person who you talked to at the beginning, who helped you, who answered your questions, who checked you out." But all of the exam, the X-rays, the blood work, the medication, none of those were attributed or associated even with that technician's name in terms of what the client took home with them. So I can see from one perspective that it would be gratifying for that technician to somehow be more concretely recognized
Yes.
for more of what happened and their role in the care that that their patient received, um,
Yes. And
in their work.
also, yeah.
And then to be able to take home the remuneration, sort of associated with that. Um,
Yeah.
and we know
And
that pay is a
also,
big thing that we're still trying to figure out
yeah.
for technicians and support staff in general. So, and
Well,
for those in terms of the AAHA's research, the Stay Please studies that we
Mhm.
did, we definitely found that pay was a huge um, factor that, when fixed, would potentially prevent employees from leaving.
yeah.
For that.
The
So,
flip side, I think, as well, is when they say, Andy, technician Andy, your name is going to be tied to this. Part of me goes, I'm going to get held accountable to these numbers as well. And it is a very much a double-edged sword. I think, I, I think that the potential here is to start to think about, new sort of compensation models for technicians that really reward the technicians. I think what we have seen or what we're starting to see is, we've seen technician salaries steadily going up. And so there has been real increases in technician salaries. I'm not saying they're where they need to be, but they have the upward trend is absolute and obvious. Um, and I do think that we're moving into a direction where practices, they want to measure things. They want to see what their performance is. I think the worst case scenario is we begin to we begin to measure technicians, and then they're having the conversations about, "Hey, you're not making these recommendations, you're not meeting these targets, you are falling behind in parasiticides and these other things, but but the compensation for performance does not come along. I think that that's something that people would be concerned about. And so when we say, are we starting to see this? I think that we are drifting that way. I think that the group practices and especially the corporate practices, I think that they're leading the way in these sorts of things. I have not seen there are definitely practices out there that do give technician bonuses based on their production. That is very true. Um, I think that we're moving in that way. I think it's only a matter of time, and this is what I would sort of encourage the technicians to do, is that if you're at a practice and they track your numbers and they look at your services and things, and if they try to show you those things and say, "Well, look, you're underperforming here," my advice to you would be to say, "Can I see the rest of my numbers, please? Can I see my other services and how I'm performing there?" And, I would push to have a well-rounded conversation because, I'm fine if I have to sit down with a medical director and they say, "Hey, Andy, you're not, doing as much dentistry I have been." I wanna see the whole picture. Like, I if I am so that may be true, but also I am doing a lot of senior blood work. I am, seeing more appointments than the other doctors are necessarily, and everything should be inside of context. And so, my hope is that through this sort of measurements and the increased tracking of just sort of performance overall, that we're gonna have more honest and open conversations that are fair because they're not just looking at one thing. That we have everyone has the same picture of how things are going on these defined metrics. And that's kind of what I hope for.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, One thing that I thought about, obviously there are pros and cons, and definitely I could think of several, things that you have to at least keep in mind. I can remember, for instance, as a veterinarian in practice at a time when business was slow
Mhm.
and we were paid on production. And there was another doctor in the practice who liked to kind of just like lurk by where the charts were dropped so he
Mhm.
could
Sure.
grab as many of them as possible.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
as soon as they came, and
Oh, I know.
it became, unfortunately, more competitive and almost kind of like there was some resentment. Everyone was trying to kind of like, I don't know, maybe he didn't wanna sit at his desk, he really just wanted to be busy, but it felt like it was a competition for the production.
Yeah, I mean it can be.
And
Yeah.
if, certainly if we were to turn to that kind of thing for other members of the team, would that same kind of thing happen? I mean, in some practices, there's so much work to go around that that's just not
Yep.
a concern. Um,
Right.
but could that in some instances sort of change people from being more kind of in a team-like atmosphere where we're all working together to supporting each other to say like, "No, that was mine. This is my case. This is my nail trim, whatever.
Yeah,
This is my conversation with the client because I want the credit for it." Um, do
absolutely.
we risk?
So the answer is it absolutely could. Okay, so I want to tease apart two different ideas here because it's important that we see that they're separating. Measuring performance and compensating people are different things. Like they are not inherently related. If you have a doctor that is on salary, I promise you, leadership is looking at that doctor's patient count, you know what I mean? At how they're working up their cases. For goodness sakes, like you owe it to the patients to be looking at what your doctors are doing and being aware of is this person working up are they working up their cases? Is this person carrying the load? Are they disappearing every time that a complicated case walks in, or are they stepping up and helping move things along? And again, you might pay everyone on salary, but at some point, someone needs to say, "What is this person actually doing in our practice? Are they carrying their share of the load? Where are they excelling? And where might they need more support or training or guidance or mentorship in order to continue to grow and develop?" And so that is, looking at performance, and it just man, compensation is different. Now, sometimes with things like production-based compensation, we're trying to tie performance directly to compensation. It has benefits and drawbacks. And so, I believe that some people should not be paid on production. There are some people whose behavior, it just immediately slants towards gamesmanship, and it becomes toxic, and we end up having people doing things, that are not ethical because they say, "Ha, this is how I get paid." I don't I choose to believe that those people are not evil or bad. Everyone's fighting a battle that we don't know anything about. Maybe this is a person, maybe this is a technician who's living paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth. They've got real expenses and they're like, I need this money to put food on the table for my children. Like, I'm not going to call that person a villain. It's just not the experience I want for our clients. And, it's not the motivation that I want to have in my hospital. And that's not a bad person, but their back's against the wall, and this is not the right system for them, for us to have the culture that we want to have. Um, it, you know, Whenever you make a game, people will always manipulate the game. Like, they will always figure out the game. I was talking to someone recently, and they were at this practice, right? And the practice decided that parasiticides were going to be the measure. They're like, "We're gonna measure parasiticides. That's what we're gonna do. Doctors, you better hit your numbers."
I
And they
remember so
really put
many
the screws to 'em.
competitions like that in
Yep.
practice. Who can
Yeah.
sell the most 12 packs
Yep.
during the
So
month?
they framed it up as they were not super dialed in to how the game, what the real rules were. So they were like, if you send parasiticides out the door, that's what we're tracking. And so as the year got close to the end, and apparently they really stressed this, and the doctors at one point went through and deactivated all the clients that had not been in in like a year,
Oh,
because what that
jeez.
caused the percentage of their patients going home with parasiticides to go shooting up. They're like, "Wow, suddenly our client percentage from the last year who took parasiticides has gone way up." It's because the doctors went through and deactivated any of the clients who hadn't been in this amount of time, and that jacked the percentage way up. And they saw a decrease in sales of 12-month parasiticide and an increase in 6-month. So the guys were like, "Hey, we're gonna send home 6 months because then that way we get 2 sales in a year instead of 1." And then in December, they saw an explosion of single dose parasiticides as people were trying to get numbers in before the end of the year. And it's like, you talk about gamesmanship and sort of, totally, abandoning the point to meet the numbers. Those I laugh about it. Those things happen, like you can the bad behavior you talked about of the vet waiting to grab the cases. Man, I've seen that stuff and that gets toxic and people get resentful. And then I'll go you one step worse. The worst version of that is the vets make deals with the front desk. And so then people come in and the cases that generate revenue, the 2 big Labradors that are both gonna get senior blood work and parasiticides and, heartworm testing and, fecal exams. Well, those go to good old Andy, who's our buddy, and the vomiting cat who we've already worked up and still can't find, an answer for, well, that goes to Emily. You know? And so, like, I've seen that kind of stuff, and so, if you want to play a game at your practice where you pay people on compensation, the biggest mistake people make is thinking, "Oh, this will manage itself." I disagree. You need to be the referee and the umpire, and you need to watch that, and you need to make sure that you're paying attention. When it's done well, the best justification for paying on production I ever heard was this. So I was still in vet school and I was working, I did an externship at this practice in Tampa, Florida. And it's a big practice. They had probably 10, 12 veterinarians. And I asked the owner, I said, "Do you pay your doctors on salary or production?" He said, "We've done it both ways." And I said, "Well, what do you like?" And he said, "Well, honestly, I didn't see much of a difference except for one thing." He said, "When I paid them on salary, at the end of the day, I had to chase them out of the doctor's office to get them to go see the very last cases. Like, they wanted to try to lay low and hopefully somebody else will take it, and I can get out of here. And when I paid them on production, I didn't have to chase them out of the doctor's office at the end of the day." And I think that that's the best case scenario. is you give this motivation. So not so that people are fighting, pushing, whatever, but enough so that they feel good about their work and they say, yeah, I feel good that I'm taking this extra room. I feel good that that I'm jumping in and doing these things. And of course, people should feel good because they're helping people. But we all get
But
tired,
sometimes they need
day
that
after
little
day.
bit of an extra motivator, you know?
Or even just sometimes it's not even a motivator. Sometimes it's a way of feeling okay. Where you say, let's just say that an emergency walked in. I was not asked if I wanted this emergency.
Right.
But at least I can say, well, at least at the end of the day, there'll be a little something extra, that I can take home to my family. It's a way of not getting wrapped up in this seems unfair that I'm doing more than these other people. And I get it. But again, you really do have to manage it. So I don't want the idea that we're heading towards a more of a performance culture to get wrapped up in the idea that production is necessarily or compensation is tied to it. Those can be two entirely different things. But I just believe, and maybe I'm optimistic, but I don't think so. I think the first step in technicians making real gains in their compensation is their performance has got to be measured. I don't think that we live in a world, especially a world of corporatization, and I'm not anti-corporate at all. This is how operations and corporations work. I they You have to justify the spend. You have to justify the salaries, and I think if your personal contribution to the team is not tangible, it is very hard for you to argue for raises for increased compensation. And so, and it's a double-edged sword. As I think that measurement of performance, as I think that opens the door for technicians to really do better in the future to demonstrate their value and to be compensated for that value, it also absolutely opens the door for accountability, which means if you're seeing half as many appointments as the other technicians, you're not going to be able to hide that. Like, it's going to come out. If you're not making nutritional recommendations and the other technicians are, it's going to come out and people are going to ask you about it and say, hey, you don't talk about nutrition. And our clinic has decided that nutrition is a key component for a long, healthy life, and that nutrition and dental health are the two most important factors in extending a pet's life. And we're going to talk about nutrition. And like, we've decided that, but you're not having those conversations, and we need to talk about that. And so that is the flip side is, you can't fake performance. I think this system is going to really benefit the people who are effective, who grow, who work hard, who apply themselves, who advocate for the patients, and I think it is gonna make life a little bit harder for people who kind of, bounce along and maybe don't lean forward. I think that, you're just gonna have to go through that process of having to answer questions about why the number of fecal examinations you did was, significantly lower than every other technician in the building.
Right. I think it definitely goes hand in hand with the idea of, you know, one of the main ways that I've heard argued by several experts in terms of how to pay technicians better or increase technician pay is better technician utilization. So
Yes.
we've got to trust and empower our technicians to do more and kind of maybe loosen our grip on so many things that technicians are perfectly trained and capable of doing and want to be able to do. And then, like you said, measure how well, how effectively, how often they're doing those things
Oh, I
and
I
reward
completely
them
agree.
for it.
But I think you nailed it right there, Emily. It's like, I see increased technician utilization. Like, I think that that's where we're going. I think that there are financial drivers for that. I think that there are training, drivers for that. I think the education of technicians allows for that. I think the difficulty in hiring veterinarians is pushing for those things. I think there's a lot of momentum in that direction of more technician utilization. And it just makes sense that we're going to pay attention to what these technicians are doing, and if you've got a technician in there doing abdominal ultrasounds, you should pay that person. Like, they're providing a service, like, yeah, they're doing the work. And you should pay the technician who does 10 of them a day and gets outstanding results and, supports the doctors well, more than you should pay the technician who does 2 of them and is not really confident about what they're doing. That doesn't mean the person who does 2 of them is bad. It doesn't mean that they can't become the technician who does 10 of them and is confident. They're just in a different place in the journey, and their value to the team right now is lower than it will be when they get those skills and build their confidence and build their efficiency. And so it all kind of makes sense to me. But again, I think that these things go hand in hand. I think that tracking what technicians do in the practice is going to open people's eyes to the idea that, hey, we can have these people doing more things for us, and that will increase utilization. And I think also increased utilization of technicians just makes it obvious that we should be looking at technician performance, one, to determine how much are they doing for our team, but also to determine what is the quality of the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and I think you really highlighted the idea of having kind of like a growth mindset too, that you may not be there right now, but we can get you there. If that's something that you are open to, that you want to work for, that you're interested in. And I think that ties into another really important concept for helping to retain top talent in veterinary medicine, which is making them feel like they can make a career here. They can make a
Yes.
career in veterinary medicine, that it's not
Well,
just a job that we're trying to sort of run them into the ground until they can't stand it anymore and then leave, and then we find somebody else.
you're so right. In the AHA, Please Stay study, like we saw that in the results. One of the biggest things that burns the technicians out is feeling like they don't have anywhere to go. One of the conversations that affected me in my career was I was in the doctor's office, and one of the technicians, who was a great technician, came in, and she said, "I think I'm going to leave." And I said, "Why? Why would you want to leave?" And we sort of talked for a little while, and ultimately she said, "I don't want to be Sandy." And when she said that, I understood. Sandy was a technician that we had, and she worked at the practice for 30 years. And she was the surgery technician, and every day she came in and she set up the surgery suite, and she did it exactly the same way as she had done it the day before, the week before, the year before, the decade before. And she just showed up, and she did the same job for 30 years. And she was okay with that. But this person in the office was not okay with that. She was like, I cannot show up and do the same thing for the next 30 years. I can't do that." And that was a big deal for me, because in that moment, I understood that. And I love Sandy. She's great. Like, she's wonderful. And that's what she wanted, and she was very happy, and she was reliable, and she just did her thing, and she went home. But other people can't, and I can't do that. I get bored really easily. I have got to be challenged in new ways. I have got to think that there are ways for me to grow and develop. And again, this is part of the optimism that I have for technicians, is I think that the pathways open to technician are going to multiply, and I really like the idea. I think it's very empowering to say, look, this is where you are in your career. And if you would like to make more money, this is the developmental path that's open to you. But I think historically we've had this real problem of a ceiling in practice, right?
Yeah,
You come in and you're an assistant, and at some point you get sort of trained up to however much of an assistant you're going to be, and then you
right.
just stay there.
Yeah.
And advancement was leave the medicine part and go and become a clinic manager,
Manager,
which
yeah.
those things are not, they don't make sense as a next step, right? Like, boy, you're really great working with patients and patient care. Why don't you go and figure out
Let's
inventory,
put you in charge of
HR?
20 people.
Yeah, and be in charge of 20 people. That doesn't make any sense to me. Or another thing that's nonsensical is, wow, you're really amazing and knowledgeable. You should leave and go to industry. And no knock on industry. It's just, how sad is it that if you're really great on the floor and you are fantastic at patient care and communicating with clients, career advancement means leaving all of that and going to work for industry. Like, again, I love industry, and there's great jobs there, and like, that can be very rewarding. It just should not be the obvious path to advancement in my mind. And so one of the things I am optimistic about in our profession is how it's developing. We just talked for support staff. I think this is true for veterinarians, and I could go off on that entirely differently. But the same paths are there for veterinarians. But for support staff and technicians, man, we first of all, we got credentialing for assistants to become technicians. We've got veterinary technician specialties now, which are growing in number and becoming more common. And there's more opportunities for people who get those specialties, those specifications. Nope, those credentials to
We
uh,
get
to
what you
use
mean.
them. Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
I know what
The
you're saying.
specials. specialty technicians, there's opportunities for them to use those skills and in ways that didn't exist before, and better, more efficient leveraging of technicians, I think is here, and it's gonna continue to come.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago, Emily, that technician appointments didn't exist, and then they were a rare thing, and now most practices have some sort of technician appointments. There's practice in Washington, state of Washington, and I got to interview, the founder of this practice, but, there's a practice in Washington that started, doing this during the pandemic. They actually have locations that only have technicians in them for wellness exams. And the pet owner comes in and the veterinarian logs in and like appears on the screen. And they can see whatever the technician is looking at. They can see the otoscope. They can do all these things. They can see the diagnostics. They can communicate with the technician in the back. But the doctor is not in the building. The doctor is at the central hospital, that's however far away. But the technicians are doing wellness appointments and they have the supervision of the veterinarian, but that veterinarian's not in the building, they're virtual. And so now you've got these it's a fascinating idea and model, and that job exists. Technicians are doing that job right now, and I think that we're gonna continue to see these types of opportunities for technicians to provide more services. I worked with a practice in New York, and there was a technician there who got really fired up about rehabilitation, and her practice owners supported her, and in a matter of years, she blew that thing up, and they are literally the last time I was there, they were building a new building for her because they were just crushing canine, rehabilitation,
That's
and they were
incredible.
getting referrals, and it was just all technician led.
Yeah.
So
I
anyway,
love that.
but again, like, you have to look, and she was able to make a business case for rehabilitation. She was very savvy. I mean, it was cool. They worked with the doctors in their practice to make it so that whenever they did any sort of orthopedic, or even most soft tissue surgeries, those patients would be referred for rehabilitation post-surgery, and the doctors got on board, and then they were feeding their surgery cases over to the rehabilitation, and then other places started to send their surgeries for rehabilitation. It's an incredible thing, but again, that's the optimistic future that I see.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm really excited to see where things go for technicians and where this conversation goes around pay. And just to ask you, I'd love to hear about one thing that I mean, you've already expressed so many things, but like, what's one
Excited about
thing?
a lot of
I
things.
know, and that's good. We love that. We need that. What's one thing that you're really excited about in veterinary medicine? Either something that's already happening or something that you're looking forward to happening in the future.
I am looking forward to continuing to see AI unpack itself in vet medicine. Now, I do have some concerns. I will say there are things that I talked about this at AAHA Con, when I spoke there in the keynote. I do have some concerns. However, I love having an AI scribe. I love being able to go into the exam room, to be fully present, to look into the person's eyes, really talk and listen to them, and not try to remember facts because I know those things are being captured. I love the fact that medical records, my medical record time has been at least cut in half, which is a huge deal. And I asked veterinarians for years, what's your least favorite part of the job? Bookkeeping and medical records were always up near the top of the list. And those for me, 66% reduction in time I spend on records probably. And my medical records are better than they used to be. They are more complete. The facts are there. If I look at the patient and I say, the right ear has this, I'm not in the back 20 minutes later going, which year was it? It's like, nope, it is there. All of that stuff is recorded. It is bullet pointed, is concise. I can pick up the medical records of other doctors, and I almost certainly they're going to be complete. I will know what the plan is or what they said, next time we'll do this. I just like it's a small thing, but I really love it. I think we're going to start to see diagnostic interpretation as far as like blood work. We're already seeing AI referrals for radiographs. My concern is I do not want to become a pair of hands for AI. I am adamant that I am going to continue to make the treatment plan. I am going to continue to look at the radiographs and decide what I think is going on. And then I will look at what AI thinks to make sure that I didn't miss anything. But I am not going to hit go and then just look at AI for them to tell me what's on that radiograph. But again, that has got to be a personal choice by doctors. or else you are going to become a weak doctor. You are going to get reliant on AI. I am not going to do that. However, I think if used correctly and you continue to push and sharpen your own skills, the number of times I've looked at a radiograph and pushed myself and said, "What is this? Do I need to be concerned about this alveolar pattern? Is that do I need?" And then to be able to immediately look over and say, "Oh, well, great. This is the interpretation I'm getting here." I think that that's really useful. I think we all have the ability to get support just in the moment, a completeness of sort of support that we haven't had before. So anyway,
I
I
think
think
it
that was one thing that I would say I'm excited about.
Yeah, and I still do some relief shifts, and I've just been exposed to AI rad interpretation recently, but I remember it being a nice feeling when I reviewed the radiograph with the client, said, "I see this, this, and
Yep.
this. This is what I see. This is what I recommend. These are the next steps," and then getting that rad report back, and it's like, "That's exactly what I just
Nailed it.
said."
Yes, exactly. And if you have that growth mindset, I think the potential for you to grow as a doctor is going to be really good. I think if you take the quick and easy way and you're like, let's just see what AI says. Okay, great. This is what we're doing. I don't think that that's going
Yeah,
to make
I
you into the
agree.
doctor that you
I
want to
agree.
be. But I mean, I think if you choose the first path, boy, I think it's just gonna be a matter of time until we're able to really do a lot of things and we get a lot of support. But anything that takes administrative lift off of medical people, I think that's probably a good thing.
Agreed, agreed. Well, thank you so much for indulging me in this conversation today and spending some time with me. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for everyone else to hear it and really hear how much we appreciate all those technicians out there, 'cause we couldn't
Absolutely.
do
Well,
it without them.
happy Vet Tech Week to everybody.
Yes. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience or anything you wanna share about where they can follow you or
Oh.
find you?
Well, yeah. So, I actually write an article every single week. I have a newsletter that comes out on Fridays. I write about sort of whatever's going on or whatever I see in the profession. The stuff that we talked about here is exactly the type of things that I tend to write about. You can find me on Substack if you're there, or at drandyroark.com. And so I just love for people to read my writing. And then, yeah, I've got my own podcast. It's called the Cone of Shame podcast, and we sort of talk about medicine and things as well. And if you want to meet me in person, the Uncharted Veterinary Conference is in January. We are doing it the day before VMX kicks off in Orlando, and so yeah, if you love business stuff and coaching and developing people and stuff like that, take a look at the Uncharted Conference on Friday, January 17th. I believe it's the 17th. And yeah, come and see me and my team there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to see where this conversation goes.
Thanks, Emily.